What do event organizers look for in speakers? My guest, Kelly Youngs, shares how she selects speakers for her events on this episode of the Speaking Your Brand podcast. More and more women are making an impact by starting businesses, running for office, and speaking up for what matters. With my background as a TV political analyst, entrepreneur, and speaker, I interview and coach purpose-driven women to shape their brands, grow their companies, and become recognized as influencers in their field. This is Speaking Your Brand, your place to learn how to persuasively communicate your message to your audience. Hi there, and welcome to the Speaking Your Brand podcast. I'm your host, Carol Cox. We are finishing up the series that we've been doing called Speaking Prep as we return to in-person speaking engagements post-COVID, which I am so excited about. That's why I'm bringing on my guest today, Kelly Youngs. She is the founder of She Is Fierce, which is a global women's network that puts on in-person events as well as virtual events. And she has one coming up this September 2021 that I will be speaking at. It's in St. Augustine, Florida, which is about an hour and a half northeast of where I live in Orlando. But the event is open to women who are all over the country and all over the world. And I'm going to go ahead and give you the link now. And Kelly and I talk more about the event in her interview, but go to sheisfiercehq.com. sheisfiercehq.com to get the details about the event. It's going to be a fantastic conference and you'll get to meet me in person, which I'm really excited about. Let me tell you a little bit about Kelly before we get into the interview. Before she founded She Is Fierce, she had a background in traditional media, including with CNN International's London Bureau, where she was a senior producer. So we talk about how she got involved in journalism and in traditional media, and then what led her out of it into what she's doing today. Our missions are so well aligned with what she does at She Is Fierce and what we do here at Speaking Your Brand to really amplify and champion women's voices and women's stories. And so I asked Kelly how she selects speakers for her events. She does storytelling events as well as events like the summit that she's putting on. So she shares how she selects her speakers, what she's looking for. We have a really great conversation about inspirational speakers, what we look for in inspirational speakers, as well as what we look for in speakers who are experts in what they do. You can get the full show notes, the links that we talk about, and related podcast episodes on the episode page at speakingyourbrand.com/231. Again, that's speakingyourbrand.com/231. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to the podcast, Kelly.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Carol.
Well, I'm excited to have you on because you are an event organizer. You put on events, both virtual and in-person events. And so I really wanted to get your perspective about how you select speakers for your events. Because obviously our listeners are speakers. They want to go speak at events. They submit proposals for events. They network with other people. And so they always wonder, well, how can I get selected to speak at events, especially events where, like yours, where it's a tight-knit community of the women that you host. And I know women come from, not just where you live, but other parts of the state. And we'll talk a little bit more about the event that you have coming up in September. And so I really wanted to get your perspective on what you look for in speakers so that they can start developing some of those qualities and some of those assets as well. But before we dig into that, Kelly, I want to back up and talk about what it is that you do now with your company, She Is Fierce. Then also what led you into this? Because I know you have an extensive background in TV and media. And so what was that transition look like? So talk to us about first She Is Fierce and what you do there.
Well, first of all, thank you for asking. I'm grateful. So She Is Fierce is a global women's network. And we say that we connect established leaders and women on the rise. And really our goal, beyond just connection, is creating a support system, a library of resources, and a community that is there to get women from their kind of vision of what they hope is going to happen in their lives to actually starting to implement strategies to make that happen and ultimately being their cheerleaders when they reach their goals. So we do many different things. We have an online membership community that is global. We have women all over the world that are members. We have a CEO mastermind circle, which is specifically for entrepreneurs who are already six-figure entrepreneurs or just about to tip that scale and are looking for new ways to grow their businesses. And then, of course, the reason that we're here today is we put on fabulous events. We do events a little bit differently. We have a big summit every year that is both inspirational and also very practical. But we also do a lot of storytelling events that are very different, I think, from typical motivational speaker opportunities or events that you might see in corporate America or even at conferences.
Okay, yeah, definitely want to dig into that, Kelly. So then, as I mentioned, you have a background as a TV producer and in traditional media. And so what led you into that in the first place? And then what led you back out of that?
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of a weird way to come into what I do, but my background is in journalism. I have a master's degree in journalism from the University of Sydney, and I worked from the very bottom of the bottom intern to first associate producer, where you basically get people McDonald's for lunch. And I worked my way up from there over many years. And my last job, technically in media, officially, was for CNN International as a senior producer. And my role was really product development for digital and TV. And really that just meant like anything new. So is there something new that we're going to do? Is it a TV program? Is it, for example, the CNN mobile app? Is there something that is kind of out of the box that we're going to do? And that would just be what I did. So I had kind of a fun job where I got to come up with ideas or help people to implement really cool ideas. I was based in London at the time. My husband is English. So I was out of their London bureau, and managed Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So it was a big job, and it taught me a lot about not just journalism, but also the business behind journalism and how to both take advantage of some of the sales strategies and some of the content journalism that I had learned throughout those years, but also how to think differently about the way that we produce content and the way that we distribute content, learning some things that I've taken away and some things that I've changed in my own experience as we've kind of built our own little media platform within She is Fierce.
So Kelly, what drew you to journalism in the first place? Like when you were a little girl, is that something that you knew you wanted to do? Like what did you like to do as a kid?
I don't know that it was something that I thought I was going to do as a little girl. I think that I always loved to read. I always loved reading the newspaper, like super nerdy kid.
Same.
Reading new books, all of those things.
Me too.
And so I think I always had a passion for that. And then as I got older, even I was just sharing the story a couple days ago with a friend. When I was in college, I remember everyone told me, take English or take communications. And I thought, why would I do that? I already know how to communicate. I have to learn something practical, right? I have to learn something different or special, because I thought communications was really like, well, we should all know how to communicate. And what I have realized over many years is that not everybody does know how to communicate well. And it is, of course, something that I've also had to learn many new skills in that area. But it's something that when you do a great job of it, which you know better than anybody, you are leading a podcast all about this subject. When you know how to communicate well, you are able to really transform people's lives or present information in a way that people can understand things better and that they can make informed decisions. That was really my calling to journalism. It's, as I said, pretty nerdy, but that's why I like it.
No, I love to read the newspaper every day. I read Time magazine, I really wanted to be informed of whatever was going on in the news. So I totally can relate with that.
We should have been friends.
Yes, totally. So where did you grow up, Kelly?
I was born in Miami. We lived in Miami, I think, until I was about 7. We lived in Dallas, and then we moved to St. Augustine, Florida. So my dad's Australian, my husband is English. I've lived in Australia and England and just all over the place. So I'm back in St. Augustine, which I never would have thought, not St. Augustine's beautiful, but I never would have thought I would come back to the place that I left high school and went out into the world. But I do love it. And it's a beautiful place to raise children. I have 2 small children, so it's a beautiful place to be.
That makes sense. It is beautiful, but a much different pace than London and Sydney, for sure.
100%. Yes. And that's still a challenge sometimes.
Yes. All right, Kelly. So you had this experience in, traditional media, but also blending into kind of what they call new media, social media, mobile technologies, things like that, when you were at CNN International. So then you left now, and I assume then you started She is Fierce after you left?
as I said, my husband's English. We were in London for many years, and then we got married. And as many women do, I thought, I'm going to have a baby. I want to be near my mom. So I convinced my husband to move to Florida, and I truly believed that we would be here for a year. I would get pregnant, I would have a baby, and then I would move to New York and I would get another job working in international media. And that was the only thing that I imagined could possibly happen. And that was more than 10 years ago now. My husband is English, so when we moved down here, we live, half a mile from the beach. And he was like, why on earth would we ever move anywhere else? So he loves it here. And I, of course, have family here and love it. But I was really struggling when I first had children, and I was thinking, how am I going to move forward in my career, right? How am I going to do that from what is a small city, really? How am I going to find a job? Really, the jobs that I was looking for would be in New York or London or Hong Kong, and that's it, really. And I knew we weren't going to move to those cities, so I was struggling. And one of the things that kept running through my mind, which many women who are looking for their purpose will experience, is this kind of reminder that I had been pitching this idea really from my very first job, maybe even as an intern, but definitely in my first job, working in local news media in Jacksonville, Florida. I had been pitching the idea of highlighting and telling women's stories. And for 15 years, I was pitching that from a local news perspective, from a documentary. I worked for documentary filmmakers. I was pitching it there. I was pitching it for international news. And I never, ever got anybody to say yes to this idea. Except I will say I had one fabulous boss, Laurel, who agreed, and we pitched it together and we both got shut down. So I just had it in my heart that this was something that would work, right? From a content perspective, but also was something that I really was seeking for myself. And of course, now we know there's a massive audience for women's stories. There are millions of women out there who were looking for that. But this was, not that long ago, but really before this movement, which is wonderful that, all over the world, people are kind of realizing the need to connect and to share and to kind of highlight women who are inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely, Kelly. I know our missions are so complementary to each other. So let's talk about the events that you're doing. I know you have your in-person, the big in-person summit coming up in September. You mentioned that you also do these storytelling events. Can you tell us a little bit about that and the types of speakers that you look for those specific events?
So the way that I like to think about our speakers in general is they are either storytellers or experts. And some of them are both storytellers and experts. But the way that we frame our events, I think, is very different from most conferences or most corporate events that people have experienced, or even local networking groups that they've experienced. And I know that's true because a lot of times people will say, oh, I've been to that women's event, and I'll say, I promise you, if you come, it will be different. And they come, and then they write me a letter, or they call me, and they say, it was completely different from what I believed it was going to be. The reason that that's the case is because we are so particular about the kinds of speakers that we feature. We never feature people just based on their resume or just based on their connection to a company. We look for people who are both truly on a personal level, inspiring, right? So my kind of, just being honest, my benchmark is, am I inspired by that person? Does their story motivate me? Am I excited to hear what they have to say or to learn something from them? And then the second part of that is our team, is our community. Do they have something that, is powerful in their personal story, or that is powerful in what they know how to do that can really connect with our audience?
I love this idea of, are you personally inspired by it? And I know this is a question that I get quite a bit from listeners and from clients, is that they'll say to me, well, I don't have a traumatic story in my background. Like my childhood was fine. Of course, everyone has a thing, but like, I don't have like this big traumatic story that has happened to me. So can I be an inspirational speaker? And I have a particular answer for that, but Kelly, I would love to hear what you would say.
Yes. Okay. Well, I would love to hear your answer too, but I will say, of course, we put on many events. We've had more than 6,000 women attend our events over the last few years. And I certainly know that part of it. But also I am a speaker too, right? So I have also had those same thoughts, and I have not overcome addiction. I have not had some absolutely horrific backstory, which I'm blessed to say that I haven't experienced that. And so I've had those same thoughts, right? Like how can I inspire on the same level as somebody who is able to share something really deep and dark and then talk about how they overcame that. But one of the things that I've discovered is the power in every single woman's story and really every single person's story. And sometimes the people that connect the most, I think, with our audiences who are there to be inspired by storytellers, sometimes they're the people whose stories are more like ours because we actually see ourselves in them. So as much as just like everybody else, I love hearing a really incredible story about how somebody overcame, and climbed Mount Everest and then transformed their lives and all of that. That's beautiful. And I love featuring those people too, of course. But I also think that some of the most impactful speakers we've had in the past have been people who are not professional speakers. We often give a platform to women who I just connect with, right? I connect with them through somebody else, or I happen to know them and I know that they have an inspiring story to tell and that they can handle getting up in front of hundreds of people. But we really kind of go on faith sometimes. And those people tend to connect with the audience in a different way because they are more like the audience. Not necessarily in their background or in their personal lived experience, but in the fact that they are not on such a pedestal or their story is not so completely different from the story of the women in the audience that it just feels, almost out of touch or out of reach.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with you, Kelly. And yes, to your point, having, someone share something where they overcame like a tremendous challenge or tremendous obstacle can be really inspiring. And like you, so here at Speaking Your Brand, we did our Brave Bold Beyond live virtual summit last October and again in April of this year. And we selected women speakers to do TED style talks. So they were 10-minute talks. They took their personal story and then talked about their kind of big idea from their own personal transformative story. And we had some women who did have like this, a huge challenge that they overcame. But then we also had some speakers, some women where it wasn't, again, anything traumatic. And I agree with you. Like, I feel so blessed not to have had that, but we all have something. And I'm thinking of one woman in particular, Dr. Bibi Parayesh. She's an educational therapist. She has her PhD in education and neuroscience. I mean, all these, she's incredibly smart. And so her talk was about how she recognized when she was a 7-year-old little girl, when she was like kind of doing homework with her dad was helping her with homework. She kind of had this revelation that, oh, wait, we all learn differently. Like we all have these different learning styles. And so she used that as kind of the basis of her talk to talk about how then like she very much sees learning differences in education as a social justice issue. So she talked about that. So she didn't have anything traumatic happen to her, but she used something that was so meaningful to her that led her into the career and into the perspective that she has now.
Yes, I love that example. And I think, just to add on to what you're saying, that it's 100% true that so many of our speakers who are not necessarily coming to the table with this horror story that they've overcome, which is also incredible. But so many of our speakers that have really connected with the audience and who I know many of them very well now. And so I love hearing how 2 years, 3 years later, they will get a message from somebody and it will say, watching your story transform my life. I made this huge change, or I quit my job and started a business, or I left an abusive relationship, like really deep things that will come out of somebody speaking, maybe not even on that particular topic. I mean, there's so many great examples from our past speakers, but to your point, it's very much about what they do well or what they know. And so their personal story, whether it's about struggle or whether it's about something that they're an expert in or something that they have worked hard to become the authority on, I think that those skill sets or those stories that they bring are often both more inspiring and also truly give the women in our audience the chance to go out and take action, right? Because for me, our goal isn't just that people say like, that was great. I loved it. It was a great speaker. My goal is really that the women in our audience say, that was amazing. I heard my story even if my story is completely different, I heard my story in what they're saying, and I know how to relate that back, and then I'm going to go take action. So there's something that transformative that happens within the audience member, not just the person on stage.
Yes. Oh, Kelly, so well said. That's a little clip right there. Thank you for that. So we have this kind of like this category of the inspirational speakers. And then you also mentioned the expert. So it sounds like then for the in-person summit, the larger event that you put on that is coming up in September, that the sessions that you're having there are kind of expert focused. So can you tell me a little bit about those and how you're selecting the speakers for those sessions?
I would say that our summit is a combination of what I just talked about, right? So what we are best known for truly is just having phenomenal female storytellers. And I would say that's kind of the core of who we are, whether it's online or whether it's in our membership. It's really about seeing the potential in women and creating a platform to elevate women's stories. But there's a second part to that, and that is how do you actually do the thing, right? So it's wonderful to go to a motivational talk and have somebody get you all pumped up and to walk out of there feeling empowered. And then you go back to work the next day, right? Or you go home and you have to put your children to bed and real life creeps in. And so our goal with our summit, or our goal when we, sometimes go in and speak with large companies, or even within our membership community, our goal is to not just inspire, but also give some practical tools to help the women who are inspired by those really fabulous storytellers to actually go out and do something. So whether it is, as an entrepreneur, as a professional, or whether it's like simple, I'm saying simple, but they're really like the core of foundational pieces of who we are, right? So things like emotional intelligence or lifestyle, things that make up our everyday. And over time, if we change our habits or we change our life choices, that can be transformative. And so with our summit, we always feature a couple of amazing storytellers to get everybody inspired. But then we also do a lot of smaller breakouts. So we give people the chance to choose kind of a path that they want to go on. If they're an entrepreneur, if they're a professional, but they can always cross over. So if an entrepreneur sees something that really speaks to them in a different category, they can always choose where they want to go. And the idea behind that is that not only do they get to listen, but there's also time for them to ask questions. There's also a beautiful workbook that they have prompts so that even if they don't get to answer all of the questions or experience everything within a time limit, they have the chance to go home and actually continue to flesh that out. And, that's honestly come from me going to a couple of events that I've seen do that and just thinking, I hold on to those. I have them from years ago, from events that I really enjoyed and speakers I really enjoyed. And every once in a while, I'll pull them out and I'll reference them. And that's our goal with our workbooks and kind of the way we structure those events so that women throughout the year, as they're waiting for the next event to come, have something that is really a prompt to make progress.
And so the speakers that are going to be speaking there, do they come from your community? I know some conferences will tend to have the same speakers come year after year, and there's pros and cons to that versus some of them will just do a completely new slate of speakers every single year. What has been your approach?
So we do a kind of a mixture of both of those philosophies. I think it's always important to have new ideas and new people and new stories, because that's what keeps us fresh and keeps us motivated, right? As incredible as I hope my story or my talk might be for somebody, the next time they're going to be more inspired to hear somebody else's, right? So I think that we have to acknowledge that. That's just a fact. And it allows them, especially if they come year after year, which many of our attendees do, it gives them the opportunity to build on their past successes and be inspired in new ways. But I also think that there are just some incredible experts. We are blessed to have women both from our kind of local regional area, but also women from all over the world. We have some mentors in New Zealand and England and Australia. And as much as I would love to fly them into town for the summit, we feature them online. So we do a lot of digital programming. We have the chance to feature them online. But we do bring in experts from other areas. Our events here based in St. Augustine, but we have women that attend from kind of a regional area. We have some women who flew in last year from New York and kind of the Northeast. And my goal really is to make it a destination event even beyond that. I would say that we are bringing in always fresh stories, but if we have experts that we know connect and we know empower, we don't bring them back every time, but we will always keep them in our kind of community and our network so that the women in our community who either attend an event or are members have the chance to ask them questions throughout the year so that they are learning and growing. And as they make progress, they can actually go to that person and say, hey, like I did this and this worked, but this was terrible. How do I fix it? Instead of what happens a lot of times, I know you go to an event, you're inspired or you learn something, and then you never hear from that person again. And that can be really demoralizing, right? You make a little bit of progress and then you go, oh, well, they figured it out. I'll never figure it out. And so the goal is to really create not just a platform, but also a community.
I love that, right? Because a lot of times you just have no access to that speaker that you saw, and then you want to, but there's just no way to reach them.
Exactly. And I love finding speakers that I'm personally inspired by, but I also love featuring women that are willing to create connection with people in our audience. And for some of those speakers, it has actually been going out to lunch with random members of our audience who've reached out to them. And for others, it's been having that person hire them as their coach or as their leader or whatever, or even, hired into their companies. But having the ability to go beyond just seeing someone on stage and having them kind of elevated above you, I think, gives people the sense that there's true potential in what they're doing.
So Kelly, as an event organizer, when you're planning your event, do you think, okay, these are the different sessions I would like to cover, because this is the theme of the event. I know this is who our audience is. So I want to make sure I have, a speaker for this session, this session, this session. And so do you kind of create the content first and then go find speakers to plug in? Or do you think, okay, I know these 5 women, they are fantastic speakers and experts in what they do. So we're going to basically curate the event content around them.
Okay, that's an excellent question. And I will say I can answer that in 2 different ways. When we have a storytelling event, when we just do a She is Fierce talk, that is often just who is an amazing speaker, right? Or who has an amazing story, not even necessarily an amazing speaker, but just who has an incredible story to share that is going to inspire and is going to get people pumped about their possibilities. And so from that perspective, we've had women who were Emmy Award winners, ESPY Award winners, huge national best-selling authors. But we've also had women who are local nonprofit leaders, right? And who are incredible and who've really powerful stories and maybe haven't been given a platform before. But then separately, when we have a summit, of course, we have a lot more time to fill and we have to do it a little bit more strategically. So I always first start with our storytellers because I think they are the kind of core and the heart of what that event experience will be like. And then we build around that. So we always try to make sure we know what the message will be from our storytellers. And then we, to kind of answer your very practical question, I would say there's always some categories that I know women in our audience would love help with, right? So things like branding, things like public speaking, things that are just across the board, things that every single one of us, no matter how accomplished you are, we can all get better at these things. So we know that there are women in our audience that are looking for support in those areas. So we try to make sure to cover those. But we will also look around and say, what's outside of the box? What are you not going to go to another conference and hear or learn about that is actually going to be meaningful for the women that are coming to this event? So definitely we have some categories where we want to make sure we cover them, but we also have quite a bit of space where, it's flexible and we do work with our speakers to try to come up with something that is going to just be great content and a great experience for the audience.
Yes, I love that approach, Kelly. I think that's a smart way to do it. To remain flexible and kind of see, where does the content match the speakers that you have there available. I know I'm excited to come speak at your event.
I am so excited to have you.
First in person post-COVID. So I am so ready and I'm going to be jumping up and down with adrenaline just to be in front of a group of people.
Well, I have to tell you, we did a small, for us, we did a 40-person event about a month and a half ago for our CEO Mastermind Circle and some of our kind of core partners. And it was just wonderful, right? Just to be able to be in a room with people. In that example, a lot of times I don't know everybody in the room, of course, but in that example, I knew everybody in the room. So it felt like a reunion. And then we just about a week and a half ago did our first large event again. And it was so nice. Both our speakers were incredible, but also just to be able to be in the room with people who I think we're all hungry for that, right? We're hungry for connection. We're hungry for inspiration. And we're hungry to do it outside of a screen.
Absolutely.
Really.
Zoom is incredibly convenient, of course. Yes, but there's nothing like in person. So I'm excited about that. So the dates for your summit are September 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 2021. So this year. And that's in St. Augustine, Florida, which is about, I would say, like an hour and a half from Orlando, northeast of Orlando. And how far from Jacksonville?
It's about 45 minutes south of Jacksonville. It is I'm gonna brag on St. Augustine for a minute. It is one of the top destinations in the country. So not only is it going to be a phenomenal event, but it's also a really popular destination. It's the oldest city in the United States. So it's all of our venues are either beautiful historic venues, really stunning architecture and gorgeous outside space. Or for our last days, they're in 3 different venues. We have a beautiful cocktail hour that's going to be outside. We have our main day. So attendees can actually choose if they want to attend just one day on the 23rd, which is our kind of main day at the Treasury on the Plaza, which is a absolutely beautiful venue that's usually used for weddings in St. Augustine. And then if they want to choose 3 days and they get to do all the fun stuff. And our last day, which is more of an intensive retreat day where the speakers actually not just speak at, but also get down on the ground and help our kind of VIP retreat members to work through whatever it is that they're doing. And that's actually going to be on the beach, overlooking the beach. So it's not just going to be incredible content, which of course it will be, but it's also going to be a really fun experience. And we've done this summit for the last few years. It always sells out. It's always really just a fun and I think powerful opportunity to create new connection, but also to walk away, like I said, with that workbook and practical steps that each of us can take. I do the same. I sit in the back and work on it myself, that each of us take forward, right? That throughout the year ahead, as we're planning for 2022, we actually walk forward and put those learnings into practice.
Yeah, fantastic, Kelly. Like I said, I'm really excited and looking forward to meeting you in person and also meeting more members of your community. I know we are working together in a VIP day in a couple of weeks to help you create your new signature talk, your keynote. So that's going to be such a fun experience as well.
I am so excited about that. And I know I shared this with you, but we're actually going to polish off a talk that I have given before, but that I believe is really the heart of what we do at She is Fierce. And it is, it's called our Impact and Influence Personality Type, but there's a lot to it. And it goes beyond just kind of identifying different impact and influence styles. And it really goes into how do we live best in the world? How do we communicate best in the world? How do we make an impact in whatever it is our goal is, whether it's, building a nonprofit or starting a business or simply just finding happiness and joy in the everyday. And for me, that's like, I'm so excited about taking this talk to the next level. And I shared this with you, but as I have been working on it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a professional in to help me to make sure that it's not just a great, a good talk, but it's really a phenomenal talk.
And it will be.
So I'm excited as well.
I can't wait. So Kelly, let listeners know, where can they find information about the summit and information about She is Fierce and everything else that you have going on? So
to get kind of general information about She is Fierce, you can go to sheisfiercehq.com. So She is Fierce HQ, like headquarters.com. And on our events page, we have the link to learn more about our summit and find out about all the beautiful venues and all of our phenomenal speakers. We actually have an opportunity as well, which is perfect for your audience. We are going to be announcing this next week, so I'm going to tell you a little bit early that we are creating an opportunity for women to actually submit proposals to be speakers. So we're keeping one slot open, and we would love to find just an incredible woman in the community or in our community who has a powerful story or who is an expert in something that they can bring to the table. So that I'm excited for that, because it's going to be a chance for us to think outside of who we already know or who we've been connecting with and feature somebody that we don't know yet who that person is. They can find out more about that. And then, of course, I shared with you a little bit earlier, we have a Passion and Purpose Challenge, which is kind of the start of the journey of She is Fierce. So women who are, often I think many of us are in this, even when we already feel like we have a sense of purpose or we already have found a passion. We're always kind of exploring what that looks like on a deeper level. And our Passion and Purpose Challenge helps to answer those questions. So it's a really fun, simple, but really kind of deep, I'm going to be honest, challenge that gives you the chance to look internally and think about what really matters to you, where you put your time and effort in the world, and to make choices about how you choose to go forward. And you can find that you just sheisfiercehq.com/passion. And we've had more than 30,000 women take that challenge. So we know it works.
That is incredible, Kelly. And I will make sure to put the links to everything that Kelly mentioned in the show notes for this episode. But just go to sheisfiercehq.com, sheisfiercehq.com/passion to do that challenge. I will be checking that out. Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the Speaking Your Brand podcast.
Oh my gosh, it's been such a pleasure. I'm so excited to have my session with you next week. And I just can't wait to listen to this. And I hope that we will see some of your incredible women in your community listening to your podcast, both coming to our summit, but also applying to be speakers at our summit.
Absolutely. I will make sure to put that word out as well. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Kelly for coming on the podcast. If you do decide to go to the event in September, please email me and let me know so that we can make sure to meet up in person there. My email is carolcox@speakingyourbrand.com. If you would like to work with us in a VIP day or longer one-on-one coaching to create your signature talk, you can schedule a free consultation call with us. Go to speakingyourbrand.com/contact. Again, that's speakingyourbrand.com/contact to schedule the call, or you can email me. Again, that's carolcox@speakingyourbrand.com. Next week, we're starting a new series all about thought leadership. Our next episode is called Are You an Influencer, an Expert, or a Thought Leader? It's a solo episode that I did that you're going to really enjoy. And then the one right after that is called 3 Types of Thought Leaders. That's another solo episode that I'm working on these 3 different types of thought leaders and what drives them, so that you can help to determine which type of thought leader you are. And that will then inform the kind of content that you create and where you show up. So make sure to hit subscribe or follow in your podcast app so you don't miss those episodes as well as future ones that are coming up. Until next time, thanks for listening.